You think you know gold and copper, right? One's for jewelry, the other's for pipes. Well, get ready to rethink everything, because these two familiar metals are actually at the very heart of a massive global power struggle that's going to define our future. We're talking about a total shakeup of money and energy as we know it. So, yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so here's the big question we're tackling today. Why the sudden panic? Why are gold and copper, of all things, causing this massive global scramble? Well, the answer, it's a wild story. It's about shifting power, a tech revolution that's changing everything, and a crazy high-stakes race to control the literal building blocks of the 21st century. All right, let's just start with a number that should make you sit up and pay attention. $6,000 per ounce for gold. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? Well, JP Morgan's research points to something pretty simple, actually. Imagine if investors all over the world just decided to shift a tiny piece of their portfolios away from traditional U.S. assets into gold. That tiny shift, on a global scale, it would be a massive tsunami of demand, and it could send the price of gold into the stratosphere. Okay, so that's the money side of things. Now let's talk about the physical side. Copper. S&P Global dropped a bombshell report saying that by 2035, we're going to need to double our copper supply. I mean, think about that, double. This isn't just steady growth, folks. This is a demand explosion, and it's being driven by, well, pretty much everything. The race to hit climate goals, sure, but also just the simple fact that our world is getting more and more electric every single day. All right, so you've got these two titans, right? Let's break them down, starting with the one that's been a part of human history forever, gold. But we're not talking about your grandma's necklace here. Nope. This is about gold's original and maybe most important role as money, the ultimate safe harbor in a really uncertain world. So what's pouring gasoline on the fire for gold prices? Well, it's basically a perfect storm. You've got countries and investors looking for an escape hatch from currencies that are losing value. They're trying to diversify away from the US dollar. And with all the geopolitical chaos out there, gold is looking like the only true safe haven. On top of that, central banks are buying it up like crazy, and everyday investors are snapping up bars and coins. It's coming from all sides. And if you want proof, just look at this. This chart says it all. Before 2022, yeah, central banks were buying gold, but it was pretty steady. Then, boom, something shifted. All of a sudden, they're buying more than doubled. We're talking record levels. And listen, this isn't just a random blip. This is a deliberate, strategic move by nations around the globe to stack up on a real, physical asset they can actually trust. So the big question is, where's the ceiling? Well, if you ask the folks at JP Morgan, we're just getting started. Their head of metals strategy, Gregory Shearer, basically said they have strong conviction that there's more than enough firepower to push gold way, way higher over the next few years. Okay, here's a really fascinating little detail, a kind of canary in the coal mine for the whole financial system. It's called the gold to silver ratio. Now, this isn't just some obscure number for traders. It's a historical health check on our money. And when that ratio starts to get squeezed, it's a huge red flag. It tells you that deep down, the system is under stress and people are starting to lose faith in paper money. All right, so that's gold, the story of money under pressure. Now let's switch gears and talk about the metal that's physically building the world of tomorrow. It's time to talk about our second titan, copper. There's a reason they're calling copper the metal of electrification. I mean, it's literally the lifeblood of the entire energy transition. Think about it. You want a solar panel? You need copper. A wind turbine? Copper. An electric car? Tons of copper. Without a massive amount of this one metal, the whole green revolution just stops, dead in its tracks. And get ready for a stat that's going to break your brain. To hit our net zero targets for 2050, the world needs to mine as much copper in the next couple of decades as we have mined in all of human history combined. Just let that sink in for a second. The scale of that challenge is absolutely monumental. It's unlike anything we've ever tried to do before. So where is all this crazy demand coming from? Well, a huge part of it comes down to this. An electric car is basically a copper-guzzling machine. Seriously. A single EV can need up to 4 times more copper than a regular old gas-powered car. Now, multiply that by the millions and millions of new EVs hitting the roads, and yeah, you can see why demand is about to go vertical. And it's not just the cars, not by a long shot. Look at this breakdown. The demand is coming from every corner of the energy transition.
We're talking solar, wind, battery storage, and maybe the biggest one of all, just expanding the entire electrical grid to handle all this new power. Every single piece of our green future is absolutely ravenous for copper.
Okay, so we've established this picture, right? Insane demand for gold, insane demand for copper. But that's only half the story. What about the other side of the equation? Can we actually get enough of this stuff? Now, this number here, this isn't some wild guess. This comes from S&P Global's Rocky Road scenario. And all it assumes is that we just keep doing what we're doing. If that's the case, we're looking at a supply gap of almost 10 million metric tons of copper every single year by 2035. Put simply, our climate ambitions are on a collision course with the cold, hard reality of how much copper we can actually dig out of the ground. You might be thinking, well, just go mine more. Easy, right? Not so fast. The reality is, it's incredibly difficult. First off, you gotta find the stuff, and huge new deposits are getting super rare. Then, even if you find one, it can take more than a decade just to get the permits and build the mine. And to top it all off, the places where we do find copper, well, that opens up a whole other can of worms. Just take a look at this map. This right here is a massive geopolitical choke point. Our entire green energy future is incredibly dependent on just two countries, Chile and Peru. Together, they produce almost 40% of the world's copper. So think about it. Any problem down there, whether it's political instability, protests, even a drought, and the whole global supply chain could be thrown into chaos. But wait, it gets even more complicated. So the raw copper ore comes from South America, right? But guess who turns it into the usable metal? China. They control over 40% of the global refining capacity, so they don't have to mine it to control it. This gives them unbelievable leverage and a huge advantage in the race to dominate the green economy. So let's just recap. We've got a monetary metal, gold, that everyone is running to for safety. And we've got an industrial metal, copper, that's facing a colossal supply crisis. So what on earth happens when these two global forces crash into each other? You know, the International Energy Agency has a phrase for this that just hits the nail on the head. We are shifting from a fuel-intensive system to a mineral-intensive one. That's it. That's the whole game right there. We're in the middle of this massive, once-in-a-century rewiring of the global economy. We're going from a world that runs on stuff you burn to a world that runs on stuff you dig out of the ground, and that changes everything. So let's just boil this all down to the key takeaways. First, gold is being repriced as a core asset for a world that's breaking apart. Second, copper is absolutely essential for the future, but we can't get enough of it. Put those two together and you get massive economic and geopolitical strain. We are, without a doubt, entering a new era, a mineral-intensive era. You know, when you look back, the 20th century was all about oil. Our economies, our politics, even our wars were all shaped by the chase for it. So the question we have to ask ourselves now is the 21st century going to be defined by the scramble for metals? Because the answer to that question is going to shape all of our lives in ways we can't even begin to imagine yet.